Yeah, we're live. What's up? Good evening, everybody. We're live at 7 o'clock, and tonight we're going to talk about, I want to get your guys' opinion. There's a lot of smart guys out there. I want to get your opinion on the 4200 Atlas motor. So here's the question. If we were to take one of those motors like we did with the 4.8 and the 5.3 and the 6.0 on the LS and take them apart, put ring gap on them, put, a good MLS gasket and an ARP head stud, maybe port the head because we know that they'll flow pretty well, put cams in it, and maybe an aftermarket intake or a super Ritchie intake, and then run a turbo on it. How high do you think we can get with the 4200 in terms of power on the stock bottom end with the stock crank, stock rod, stock piston, and stock block? So a couple questions here. First of all, which one of those things do you think would be the first thing to go? Like, what's the weak point there of all of that? On the 4200, I'm told that we need to do an oil pressure mod because according to Mark, when GM designed this was their first shot at variable valve timing. And so they directed all of the oil flow basically to the VVT actuator, and unfortunately took that away from other areas that were a lot more critical, like main and rod bearings, which are important. So he's got an oiling mod that he does for the outside of the block that we basically take a feed off of and pressure into the side of the block into some oil plugs, and that way we get oiling, not just to the VVT actuator, because we honestly don't care so much about that. And that should function with a lot less oil flow. But as we know, bearings will not do that. So if assuming we did that and didn't have a problem with, bearings and clearances and oil flow, how much power do you think that will make? We've seen some of the stuff on, online. I know the Fairmont with the 4200 in it is run 9s, which is really, really impressive. But that's really only about 450 or so at the tire. So I don't think that's anywhere near where they could be. And especially if you take them apart and put ring gap in, because I know that he didn't. It would be great if he did, and that way we could find out what it will do, because that's, in my opinion, that's almost always the first thing that's going to go. It's almost always going to be the ring gap. That's gonna cause one of the ring lands to break, I think, before a rod breaks or before the piston breaks, just from cylinder pressure, and probably before a crankshaft will break, or usually way before we get to the block. The block is usually the least of the problems. Like with the LS, the block is the least of the problems, especially an iron block. The crankshaft seems to work fairly well. It's almost always a rod or a piston, and usually with the LS stuff, it's a rod. Although I haven't got to the strength limit of a Gen 4 rod. So maybe the 4200 has a Gen 4 S rod and it's going to work out really well. So let me know what you guys think. Thomas is saying a wrist pin. That's also possible. The wrist pin's an odd size. It's not a normal pin. I'm sure it's not a heavy duty pin like we would want in there. But, I look at that and think, okay, that might be a problem. Then I look at the pins on on an LS and think, well, they were obviously never designed for that. And, I'm sure it's possible to bend the pin or gall the pin or something. And I'm sure that would be a problem. But we've almost always just broken the rod before that's happened. So 1,000 horsepower and the rods go first. Okay, nice. I like that, stepping up. Dude, Andy found an L76 and a 6L90E. Nice. That's a good combo. Can we request you build something really weird like the keglet on? That is pretty quirky, right? Anthony, somebody did have one on Drag Week long ago, and it made big power, but I think that was a modified version. That was the aftermarket rods and pistons and stuff. Yeah, Strain TV, don't worry about it. All of the stuff that I did for the Big Bang motor, it was 30 was kind of a go, no go. Some of them probably 35, some of them were 30, some of them, it's all good. Yeah, the head gasket I'm concerned with, although the factory one is an MLS gasket. So usually what happens with an MLS gasket is if you break the gasket, it's because you torched something else. Usually the tune is so far off that you've hurt something else, and the gasket only went, as a last resort. 1,163 horsepower. That's oddly specific, but I like it. The 4200 in some configuration will have ARP head studs and the MLS gasket, although I think that the factory one. Strain TV, what's going on? Thank you very much. Yeah, Strain, just keep going what you're doing. You're fine. Anthony says he knows he saw one. So you saw a stock bottom end. Oh, had a turbo one on Power Tour. Okay. The head bolt diameter, the head bolt thread pattern is the LS. And the length, I'm told, is very, very close to an early Gen 3 LS, so that those will supposedly work. I was also told that I'll break a bunch of the stock ones when I take them out, which I think is probably the case. But I'm also told that after you do that, they're not that hard to get out, and that the LS early Gen 3 stuff will work in these motors. I've never used copper gaskets. I only use on the LS stuff. We only use MLS, and I only used MLS on the Honda stuff. I've never tried copper ones. The only problem I've seen with copper is the sealing seems to be okay, although they use copper and then use wire grooves, and they usually press in the wire so that it embeds into the copper. I don't want to go through all that. They have a receiver groove and stuff. The problem I've seen with copper is leaking water. It's usually external, so it's not a problem, but that's just not my thing. Yo, Karen's in the house. What year motor did you pick? It's an 06. Hey, Richard, can smaller displacement motors ever have an advantage over bigger motors? Yeah, for fuel economy, they're much better, but not usually for power. Yeah, James, I spoke with him and looked over his YouTube channel, and there's a lot of good stuff there. For you guys that haven't seen it, go to that channel. It's NIVLAC 57, Nivlac 57. You need to go there. He's got a lot of cool stuff on the 4200 because he's actually out racing them, which is very, very cool. Blake, we've reused MLS gaskets a lot. I got something trying to bite me. Maybe it's a tick. We've reused MLS gaskets a lot. When I did most of the head testing for the LS Cathedral port stuff and the rec port stuff and the LS7 and all the stock stuff, we just reuse the head gaskets every time. They're fine. You can keep doing them and redo them, especially since we ran so few runs with each one of the heads. Will you ever mess with a Jaguar straight 6? That's not really on the list. I've seen a couple of them, and I think that they're cool, but I haven't ever run one on the dyno. The guys from West-Tech ran one, but a real early one, a 50s era, 57 or 58 Jaguar. Oh, PFI did a compound turbo 4200. Cool. Dale from Australia wants to see a Mercedes M104 straight 6, 3 liters. I have to go do some research on that and see. I like those. I know that the Nissan, like my 240, 260, 280Z stuff, that was a direct copy of the Mercedes 6-cylinder. But I've never run one of those. My wife has a cool turbo 4-cylinder in her Mercedes, but that's way too new. Any plan on upgrading the springs? Yeah, we will. We won't need to right now because the testing that we're running now will just be with stock cams initially, but we will be doing that. Yeah, Logan, Tony, Lucky had trouble removing those. Nothing on the new GM 4.3 liter. I haven't seen that. No, the computer that we're using is it's a mega squirt or a micro squirt. I can't remember now which one it was. Hopefully Mark will chime in here sometime. He usually shows up. He can tell you which one it is, but he did the harness for it and the ECU and even started his vehicle that has that motor in it with this setup. And so we know that it will work. The challenges for the 4200, the initial one is going to be getting the bell housing to work, but I'm told that the bell housing, and this was told by I wish I could remember his name, the gentleman that has the Fairmont and the Studebaker, that the dowels, the locating dowels for the bell housing on a small block Chevy and an LS on a 4200 are in the same position. So even though the rest of the bolt holes are not, those are. So that will make it a lot easier to, if we have to make an adapter. Also, this motor came with automatics, but that bell housing from the automatic unbolts from the trans, which is nice. So now we need to see if when we unbolt the bell housing that bolts to the motor, that part of it solved. If the other part, the part that bolts to the transmission, if that part, it will bolt to the dyno. That's the other. So one way or the other will get it up there. I don't know if the Atlas has cross-bolted main blocks or not, but we've run lots and lots of power without cross-bolted main blocks. Yeah, the big block guys have asked about the big block V6 stuff. The LSX Sith, they always mention me like I'm Gandalf. Maybe they just think I'm old. I hope that's not the case. Yeah, they did a concept Trailblazer with the twin turbo setup on it. They were really small turbos and stuff, but that's it shows that they were thinking that way anyway. Karen, send me an email. Let me know what cams you want for what kind of application. I've got some stuff here. I just came back with, I found a Hemi cam, a Gen 3 Hemi cam. I've got a couple of small block Chevy, like hydraulic roller stuff. I got some, I don't know. I've got some other stuff too. Who's Gandalf? And if I'm going to be Gandalf, I want to be Gandalf the White. Yeah, we're going to add oil lines, external oil lines, so that we have to the oil fittings. Calvin, that's right. Okay, that makes it a lot easier, Mark. Now I can remember Calvin. Logan, let me know. Send me here. I'll give you my email address. @AOL.com. And I'm going down, we need to talk a little bit about road trips too, because I'm taking another road trip down to West Tech, although it's a very fast one. I've got to go down there and drop something off and pick something up, and I'm coming back right away. So have you heard of or tried Data Advisor? It's Polyquad on anything. Seems like it would work well on a, no, I haven't. I've read about it, but I haven't tried it. Hey, Richard, I've noticed that long intake runners cause sine wave in the torque curve. If intake runners are cut in an angle, would it smooth out the torque curve? No, you just need to have the runner length be the correct length. Now, the factory chooses a runner length and a Plenum volume. They all work together. You see, their curve is actually very, very nice, and they do that on purpose. When we just arbitrarily change one aspect of the intake manifold, we'll change the shape of the curve, and it's really cool. And I noticed this when I was doing adjustable runners, is that like when I was doing the mod motor stuff, particularly, we would have a sine wave in the power curve, and then when I would change the runner length, and we were changing it by 1 or 2 inches at a time, you could take that sine wave and then just move it in one direction or the other. And the interesting thing is, obviously, the ideal situation is to always have the always be on the upside of that sine wave, and you could do that with an adjustable runner. It's really pretty cool. My LS has high compression. Is it cranking compression on one cylinder? If you're, what you should be looking for is probably water or oil or gas in there. A lot of times that's what happens. If you get water in there, the cranking compression will be high. Usually means a bad head gasket or something. Factory main girdle. Okay, James said there's a factory main girdle on the Atlas. Cope, off topic. Is there a low end advantage to having a larger roots blower? Actually, the low end advantage would be having a smaller roots blower. You want to have a smaller roots blower and spin it faster, would be a better application for that. Fly, we have a number of different turbos we can run on the 4200. I have a GT3076, I have a GT3582, I have a GT45, I have an S475, I have 7875 Gen 2, we have the 7876 from Force Performance. I also have a couple of, man, what are they? I want to say that they're 60 millimeters or 65 millimeter turbos from, it's been so long since I looked at them. They're from Turbonetics. We have a couple of those as well. Yeah, the 5-cylinder and the 4-cylinder and will the 5-cylinder and 4-cylinder and the 6-cylinder all work the same? Do they all have the same bell housing in that Atlas family? Yeah, the 300 Ford has nice long runners, and I like that. They're doing it for torque production, and I'm sure it works very well. And I'll show you an extreme example of that, because I'll make an intake manifold that adapts to that, and we can make them even longer. We could cross them back over the valve cover. I don't know, Julius. Guys are making really big power with those Barras, but if you look at the displacement and the head flow, as long as we can get cams for it, I think it should do pretty well. The only thing that it doesn't have is the Barra. They had a version that's turbocharged, and they have that alternate fuel version of liquid propane or something, and those were built fairly stout. So I'm wondering if the block maybe in the Barra is going to be stronger ultimately than the block in this 4200. Yeah, BorgWarner S366 is also a workable choice. The Atlas, I don't think, is the same as the bell housing like for the 3800. Yeah, we talked to people about the harmonic balancer on that. That there is another option for that. Doesn't matter what motor it's going to be; it's always going to be a 54-454. I was thinking you would have said 54-469. That seems to be the comp cam anyway that I recommend more than anything else. 4 digits out of the Ameribarra would be very, very cool. Yeah, I agree, Karen. The GT3582 would be cool, because then we could make 500 or 600 horsepower or something, and that would be cool out of that little turbo, and then go up to the GT45, because both of those are really, really, and I want to run those because they're both really, really inexpensive turbos, and that's what guys would look for initially. I haven't used the VS Racing blow-off valve and wastegate. I only have Turbo Smart stuff, only because that's what I have, and it's already attached to my tubing, and we just reuse all of that stuff. Yeah, I thought that the 4200 is that's the only bell housing that it has. It's not, doesn't share it with the 3800 or any of the metric ones. We can get cams rig around. I'm going to talk to the guys at Schneider and see about that. I also want to talk to Billy at Comp and see what it would take to get some, like, real cams ground for it. Yeah, we could shim up the lash adjusters. We've done that on mod motors before too. We just put washers down underneath them. A two-stroke engine, probably not. Although I really did like the old. I used to ride around a lot on a buddy of mine had an RD400, and we used to ride around on that a lot. It was very cool. I have a little two-stroke. I have a. If anybody's interested, if anybody needs a motorcycle, I have a Yamaha DT125. I think it's a 74 that I'm gonna get rid of because I just never ride it. We used to ride it at the ranch a lot, and my parents sold their ranch, so I don't have it anymore. So I don't have really any place to ride it around. Big Bang is a consideration on this one. Ishmael, I'm new to the live stream. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Yeah, I can show you how we hook it up. Like I said, it's already been done. Mark already did all the hard work because he already made it work. So I'm hoping that he made it like idiot proof for me, because that's what I'll need. But as long as I can hook up a red wire and a black wire, or the power and a ground, I'm pretty good to go. And then Eric will probably from West-Tech will probably be responsible for the tuning. He's done a lot of these. Not 4200s, but he's worked a lot with the micro squirt and the mega squirt, and he's done a lot of stuff because he works with all of them. He's an AEM guy and a fast guy and a Holley guy and Motec and all that. So he's done a lot of stuff. I'm sure that once he shows me how I can add fuel, add timing, take away timing, and then we just have to do sweeps on the cam timing. And luckily Calvin has showed us. I talked to him about the cam sweeps, but I'm going to do it the way that I always do everything. We're going to start rich and start with low timing, and then we'll change the air fuel and see where it likes it, and then change the timing and see where it likes it, and then we'll do the same thing like we did with the K-Series Honda. We'll try the cam timing and just see where it likes it. It will tell us, the dyno will tell us what it likes. A Sid, a GT45 Big Bang, I don't think we'll get to the Big Bang point on that turbo or the S366 maybe. I think it might do more than that. What's the recap? We're talking about a 4200 Atlas inline 6-cylinder and what we think the power output, ultimate power output might be if we did a stock bottom end the way that we've done all the LS stuff with added ring gap and head studs and gaskets and ported head and cam and stuff, but all the stock bottom end stuff. How much power do we think it will make under boost is kind of the discussion here right now. Okay, Julius, hit me with the junkyard version. Okay, the preferred bearer combo down here from a junkyard point of view is the NA-10-3 LPG engine that has the same rods as the turbo and forged pistons, and then turbocharge and convert to E85. That sounds like a good combination. And I was talking to Calvin and Mark about this, and Mark will just put enough octane. Uh-oh, my connection's unstable. Come on, come back to me. Come on, you stupid YouTube. And hopefully I'm back. But I want to run it at 10-1. We're going to make more power that way. The only cams that are available are going to be regrinds. So low end upgrades are oil pump gears, valve springs, E85, intercooler, exhaust, and tune for around 500 to 550 horsepower. That's good power. Yeah, Jonathan will show me with my eyes closed, just pecking at numbers to trying to get it to work. I'm sure it will. You know, I've learned fast and learned Holley, and it's not, as long as I know, as long as we can get the motor running, and then I can add fuel and take away fuel and add timing and take away timing. Doing the wide open throttle stuff is not really that hard. Oh, Chad. I don't know if Chad's run that wagon again. I've been after him to try to get the blower back because he got a blower on it. He needed to upgrade the fuel system. The feed line going to the pump was way too small. From the tank to the pump was way too small. So that was kind of limiting things. But that didn't make a lot of power, as we showed on the engine dyno. Yeah, an S480 would definitely put us into Big Bang territory, I think, on that 6-cylinder. Joe says the 4200 will go bang before it needs ring gap. I don't know. The long stroke and cast aluminum block don't mix well. We're losing. Am I back? Am I back? Can everybody see me now? Yeah, we don't crash. I don't get involved in emission stuff. That's why we do all the testing on the engine dyno. Yeah, Sid, we're going to put external oil feeds because Mark told us to. So we've got to listen. Yeah, John, we add a gap to both the first and second rings, but not to the oil ring. The forge internals are available for the 4200. You have to have custom pistons made, which is not that big a deal. You know, it's a little bit of an expense, but I think it would be really cool to take the 05 crank and then do a forge rod, forge piston, ported head, real kind of cam, and then a short runner intake, and then obviously a different dampener. And because I'm told guys are running these things over 10,000 RPM in stock eliminator or one of the drag race classes, the NA ones, and that they're making over 600. That's probably a modified motor, obviously, but if they're running that RPM, it might be that you need to get through this resonance frequency, and we would be changing that with the dampener possibly. So it's all interesting stuff. Yeah, and Tristan, we would feed the timing in and feed the boost in. If we did a big bang on this, we wouldn't do it like with a flat boost curve. It would be a rising boost curve so that we don't have a big torque number. And especially because of the RPM range that we run, like I would like this thing to make peak power at 7,000 and not at 5,500. Because if it makes it at 5,500, whatever your power number is going to be really close to that amount of torque. So if we make 1,000 horsepower, we're also going to be making near 1,000 foot-pounds of torque. And that's just not a good combination. That will definitely hurt things. That's why we want to have a rising boost curve. And if we can have the peak power happen at 7,000 or 8,500, 8,000 or 8,500 like we do on the K24, that's even better, I think. Although, again, for me, there's a limit to RPM, too, because I think that the RPM can also hurt it. Like I said, what is the RPM limit? It would be with a built engine. If guys are running these things to 10,500, that's pretty good. For a daily driven truck, would you build a 5.3 or buy the 6.0? That's usually a question of cost. The 6.0 is better. It's going to be more responsive and more torquey, and it will be, it'll feel better. But a 6.0 is usually more expensive than a 5.3. If you can find them both for the same price, then get the bigger motor. Fool the timing with the IAT and crank the fuel pressure. Malcal, we don't have to worry about fooling it. We just tell it what timing it will have because it's a standalone fuel injection. So it can be anything that we want. I have a Trailblazer and HP tuners. We could find out what RPM till it comes apart. Well, if you're willing to sacrifice one, we'll all listen for that data. Costa Mesa's in the house. If that's Costa Mesa, California, I used to live there for a lot of years. An L86 Big Bang, probably not. Brian, I'd like to take credit for that, but I think Matt has an awful lot to do with that over at Sloppy. And there's lots and lots of guys that have YouTube channels that are doing LS kind of stuff specifically, and they're out there putting them in and racing them and doing lots of stuff. So there's a lot of guys that are, I just did the Big Bang stuff and brought some attention to it. EMT does cams for the 4200. Who is EMT? I remember seeing one of those mentioned on YouTube, but I don't know who that was. Yeah, Andy, our junkyard does that too. They only do it on the 454 Chevy though. The 454 Chevy, the big block is more than all the other engines in the junkyard are the same price, except for that one. Sleeper Nation, you could do 600 horsepower on a 6-liter L76 with a stock cam. And you don't need any supporting mods. You just need the motor, and since you already have a cam, you need springs, and then I always put head studs and put gaskets in it, and then the right size injector, and you're on your way. And if you already have a Circle D converter, you're good, man. You're golden. Yeah, 600 horsepower is just a stock motor with boost. The 4200 does have variable cam timing. It's only on the exhaust. As showed, there's definitely power to be had by adjusting that. And he also manually adjusted the intake cam timing by moving it one tooth. So it would have been interesting if he would have left it the way that it was and then did some sweeps on the intake and then moved it, and then did some sweeps on the exhaust and then moved it and then some sweeps on the exhaust to find out if they wanted different things. But it'll still be interesting when I do it, because we'll do sweeps NA and then we'll do sweeps under boost and find out if it likes different cam timing under boost than it does NA. Yeah, Andy, if you got a 6-liter, you should be happy. Okay, Mark, that's cool. I don't know if the 4, I'll have to ask the guys at Mega Squirt if their programming will support the 5-cylinder and the 4-cylinder. That'd be interesting to run. Just for even run stock ones would be kind of cool. What is a 1FZ? Does runner volume matter? Yes, runner volume does change the power output. Yeah, we've removed the bell housing from the trans that came with the Atlas already. Yeah, I saw the guy that did the Windsor with the LS heads. Yeah, Sleeper Nation, 600 horsepower on a 6-liter with a turbo on it is fairly easy. If you're talking about flywheel horsepower, yes, definitely, and you just have to turn the boost up a little bit more to get 600 wheel horsepower. But when we run a stock 6-liter on the dyno, it makes about 400 horsepower. And so at 600 horsepower is just 7 or 8 pounds away, as long as you have the octane, especially if you're running E85. That's pretty easy. And we've done 600 horsepower a lot of times with a 5.3. It just takes 10 or so pounds to do it. Brian, you will be okay to reuse unknown mileage pistons. Sometimes it's better not to know. Oh, a Toyota straight 6. It's a 4.5-liter 2J. Huh. Oh, in the Land Cruisers. Okay. That's got to be a real low RPM deal in a Land Cruiser. I remember driving one of those. Clayton, I haven't figured out what it is. I think that the Cadillac STS blower, I think that it was belt slippage though. The 4200 is rated at 291 horsepower, and it's at a fairly low RPM. I say low. I think it's 5800, Julius. So it's a pretty good power output on the 4200. It's higher than a 4.8 LS or an LR4 basically is. So it's actually fairly stout. It's got good. It's a 4-valve head, and you know, it's 4.2 liters. It's not 4.8 liters. So it's I'm actually excited about it because I'm expecting fairly big things. Honestly, I'm looking at this thinking, okay, this thing makes if this thing does on the engine dyno what an LS does of similar power outputs, we're looking at 340 or so, maybe, the way that we run it on the engine dyno with an open exhaust. And with a header, I'm hoping that the header helps it. I'm told that the header doesn't help a stock motor, but I don't know that anybody's ever tested it the way that I test it. So I'm going to try that. I'll try a long tube header on it. And I think if we get 340 or 350 horsepower NA, that's going to be a really good start to making, you know, look at 14.7 pounds, puts us at some fairly good numbers. I mean, we're talking about near 700 horsepower. EM Tech Motorsports. Alicia and Anthony, do they have specs on that cam? Okay, hit us up with some specs so we can figure out whether how much power it's going to make. Wouldn't the STS be less likely to slip on the 6.0 compared to the 4.8 due to the lower boost? No, actually, it's moving more air, so it's going to be probably more prone to slippage. How close are you to getting the 4200 on the dynos don't work dyno? We're pretty close. I think we have everything. We just need to find out if the bell housing will fit on there. Richard, you pin your crankshafts. We did on the 4.8 and on the 6.0. We pinned both of those cranks because I have some good data on the 4.8. And I may have put that in the 6.0 video. I can't remember now. But we tried running the 4.8 with the blower before I pinned the crank because I purposely wanted to see if we were going to get into a slippage situation, and we did. And you might not on, if you got a motor from the wrecking yard and the balancer had never been off, you wouldn't get into balancer slippage as quickly as I did. Mine has been on and off. I'm sure it's 100 times at least. And right now it's all but like a slip fit. So we just tighten the hell out of the bolt, but that's not really enough. I mean, if you have one that's actually pressed on, that goes on really hard, like a factory one does, and you have the bolt tightened like a factory bolt is supposed to be tightened, which we don't do, we just hit it with an impact, it's going to slip less than ours did. But it did slip on the 4.8, so I pinned it, and then before even running the 6.0, we pinned that one as well. T. Ryan, we're talking about 4200 Atlas inline 6 cylinders and other associated assorted engines. We're using the bell housing from the 4L60 on the 4200. I saw the guy, Calvin did a thing on the adapter plate for the for bolting it up to a Turbo 400, and so that's, like I said, that's going to be easy. Just the fact that the dowels already line up is going to make things, that's very simple. I'm not even going to go through the drawing and all of the math and all the stuff that he did. We're just going to put it up there and go, okay, we have to add here. And then all I do is I'll turn down some bolts or studs and to a center point, and we just use those and screw them into the holes and then tap the plate against it, and it marks where we have to drill the holes. And we just do them one at a time, put the bolt in, remark it, do another one, do another. And it's really easy that way, especially because the bell housing already lines up on the dowels. It's already centered. So that means that the crankshaft and the input shaft are going to be in the right orientation. And that's the hardest thing with making an adapter. An LPG barrel makes 209 horsepower and 275 foot-pounds of torque. NA, yeah, so that's not even close. And 254 horsepower and 282. 254 and 282. Okay, that's good torque. Turbo makes 362 and 405. That's good. So Ryan Falconer did some Atlas stuff, Andy. That's cool. He knows how to make power. Yeah, Sleeper Nation, an S480 on a 6-liter is going to work good. Turbo 351, 25 to 30 pounds of boost. That's a good range to be in if you have a good 351. Don't recall the specs on the cam, but it's only the exhaust cam. Yeah, we don't. It doesn't need just an exhaust cam. It needs an intake and exhaust cam, and it needs to be something. Assuming we have piston to valve clearance, which I think we should. It needs to be something that's in the 220, 225 at 50 range. Think like Type R, Type R Honda kind of specs, and I think that will put us in a pretty good spot. Our 2.9-liter 4-cylinder Atlas makes 450 horsepower NA. So will tell us what you did to it. It's obviously not stock. So, throw some specs out there. Ernesto, we talked about that, using the Gen 3 Ellis ARP studs in that. Yeah, Calvin is, if you guys need to look up Calvin, if you guys want 4200 information, he's done lots of stuff. He's got some cool dyno videos where he's actually running on the chassis dyno and making changes and showing the numbers. And so he's doing good stuff, the kind of stuff I like to watch. Yeah, the cam timing is the thing that I'm worried about. Although, like I said, if we're making 350 NA and we start adding boost, we get to some fairly big numbers. I have not run any of the 4-cylinder Sky Redline stuff, none of the Ecotech stuff. I don't know about the drivetrain in the 4200. Probably not. If it's a 4L60, it's not going to work. But he hooked his to a Turbo 400. And I like him because I knew he was my kind of guy when he told me, yeah, we got a converter from a swap meet and we don't even know what it was, but it was about this size and it seemed to work okay. So you got to like that. Brian, I wish I could run my 3-cylinder sprint motor on the engine dyno. That would be really, really cool. Can you get the 4200 cams measured on a cam doctor? I think we do have one. I think Westech has one. What do you think will handle more power, 4200 inline 6 or a 4.3-liter V6? It depends on which 4.3-liter you're talking about. A modern one, I think, makes a lot of power. Dave, you don't have to worry about blow-by. If you open it up to 28, it'll be fine. What do you think of Cameron wants to know, what do you think of a 4-inch stroke versus the shorter stroke on a high revving LS motor like 8500? Well, guys are running LS7s to 8500, and that's a 4-inch stroke. What you'll do is make more power all the way up compared to the shorter stroke. And so you can usually, that 8500 is about the range where valve train is a concern and not piston speed. Yes, Brian, a 3-cylinder Chevy Sprint. Look up 1987 Chevy Sprint Turbo. It's a Geo Metro basically, but it's a turbo version. So it's a factory 3-cylinder, 1-liter, port injected, air-to-air intercooled with a cool hood scoop that says intercooled on it, which is the only reason that I got the car, and because it says turbo on the side of it. But I did it for fuel mileage and stuff, but it was a good car. We set land speed records with it. It's a pretty cool car. It's rated at a whopping 70 horsepower from the factory. That's turbocharged with 70 horsepower. So I think we were up to about 110 at the tire when we ran it out at the East Coast Timing Association back at the Maxton Mile. Vishmai, we're in the USA area. We're in California. Yeah, it's hard to remove the cylinder head bolts, but even if they snap, that's okay because we're going to replace them anyway. I think that the 4200 has potential. If you're just going to throw one away, you might as well take it out and do something with it. Even if you're just going to blow it up, it would be cool. Yeah, Brian, I like those little cars like that. Like I like that Chevy Sprint Turbo. I had the Civic VX, which was another high mileage stuff. I like the high fuel CRXs. The Metro XFI is the kind of the king of the mileage stuff. Although it didn't have much power, I always wanted to have one of those, but turbocharged, so that it had a little bit of power at least, and you could still drive down the road. Basically you're producing gas as you drive down the road. It was so cool that, like in the Civic too, in the VX, because it would get 55 or 56 miles per gallon on the freeway on the long drive down to West Tech if I would drive it correctly. And I put a boost gauge on it, not because I was ever going into boost, but use it as a vacuum gauge so that we knew, and you could feel it when you would go out of lean burn into what they called enrichment mode. And enrichment mode actually is just stoichiometric. So you go out of like 19 to 1 into 14.7 to 1, and you could feel that. You could feel the change in power. So you wanted to stay in that range. So if you were driving 60, 65 miles an hour and just motoring down the road, and I loved pulling into the truck stop where I got gas, and I would put about 4 or 5 gallons in and it would fill up the tank, because I only went through half of my fuel. It was only a 10-gallon tank, but I could go, we could go 500 miles on that tank. And watching all the guys in the SUVs spend $100 or something to fill their stuff up. The 65 Nova wagon, was that the one that was the drag week one? I think that the Yano Suzuki's version of that Sprint Turbo was the 1.3 liter Suzuki Swift motor and not the 1 liter motor, if I remember right. I could be wrong though. I like the little Nissan SERs too. I really like the older square Sentras. Those were really cool. I raced against those, and well, we were in a different class in World Challenge, but there was one guy running a Sentra SER. It was really, really cool. He couldn't keep up with PD Cunningham and those guys in the Integras, but it was really fast, and it was, it just looked cool. Luke, I have videos up on runner length unchanged. If you look at any of the intake videos, there's a direct correlation between runner length and the power curve. Plenum size, you can look at the Keglodon that I did where we changed the runner length by 3,000 or 4,000%. Diameter is a different thing. That would be a different test. Mike, why is the 4,200 more money? There's a whole bunch of them at the wrecking yards where we go. The cams are only available as regrinds, I think, Blake, on the 4,200. Yeah, Steve, if you're making that kind of power out of a 4-cylinder, that's you're changing all the stuff. Oh, 15.8. Yeah, that's a lot of it. Take stroke out of it, add bore, cams, 240, 600. Common Plenum intake with 500 2-barrel Hollies. Interesting that you would go that route. Why didn't you guys, Steve, why didn't you guys try like an IR manifold? Did you guys try that stuff? And then try an IR manifold, move the injectors out on the top and stuff? Or is this for a class thing? Obviously, you guys know what you're doing and you're making power, so. Yeah, hopefully we don't. Hopefully that doesn't raise the price up just because, you know, we did a cool couple of videos or whatever on it. I don't think so. There's just way too many of them at the wrecking yard. Oh, your class requires carbs, and it's, you can make power with carbs, that's for sure. Oh, comp eliminator, okay. And maybe if we do the video, that will wake up the aftermarket and somebody will make cams for them. Maybe we could all get together and do a group buy on cams and you know, make some sloppy stage 2 Trailblazer cams. Sleeper Nation, are you doing a turbo on that? I can't remember now. There's been so many comments. But I wouldn't change the lift on the sloppy stage 2. It's enough. That's what happens, Steve. You keep adding power and you find the next weak link and then you fix that and then you go to the next one. Tim, what was your comment? Why are you so needy? I did comment on the sloppy tack. So what's the deal? Come on. Do you just need a hug? We need Holly to support the 6L80 and 90 trans controls. Okay, cool, Sierra. You found 2 of them. On the longer intake Plenum, like the Kegledon, did you ever find a length where it no longer helped low end? It didn't change anything. The Plenum volume changed almost nothing on that test. But longer, the Plenum volume didn't seem to have a big effect. I know from other tests it does, because when we did the test on the Ford 462 valve, and they have a divider on the truck manifold, on the 462 valve truck manifold, they have a divider that opens and closes and connects the 2 plenums. And when they do that, they do it down low, down at like 2,500 or so. And it definitely changes the power, because we showed that. We ran it open and we ran it closed, and then we see why they're doing the flapper door, because there's definitely a big pickup in torque. And that would be good right in the range where guys are, you know, just getting on the throttle, rolling down the freeway and stuff. So it works pretty well. The Kegledon showed nothing, and I've done lots of other changes where we've changed plenum volume and it's done nothing to power. Runner length always changes power, but sometimes the plenum volume doesn't. We've seen that also in doing carb spacers on single plane intake manifolds. Sometimes that does nothing, other than sometimes it does something, especially if we're running a carbureted combination, because it affects the carb signal. So the change might just be from the carb signal, or it might be from the change in plenum volume, which changes the resonating volume of the plenum. And you can also change the inlet tube. That changes the Helmholtz resonance. There are a lot of things that you can do to change it. So you think an SR20 would run with a K20? I don't think it will. I don't think it makes anywhere near the NA power that a K20 does. I could be wrong. Can you start a forum? No. Unless somebody else ran it. I don't have any time for that sort of thing. Junkyard Hellcat blowers on a 6.4. That should work, right? Does HP Tuner support the 4200? I don't know. Does anybody know? I've never tried to run one on a factory vehicle. Steve, we will run the stock intake on the 4200, but I'm also making my own adjustable intake so we can change the runner length kind of at will. Yeah, Brian's right. You won't find a Hellcat blower in the wrecking yard. We're going to try to do cams for the 4200. We'll do some regrinds first and then see how that goes. What cool cars have you owned? The coolest car probably that everyone would like is a 2006 Ford GT. So that's definitely the coolest one. Although I like the Chevy Sprint also. I had a I don't know, a few weeks before I just turned it. I had a 69 tri-power Corvette, a 427 tri-power car, which was cool. I've had various Camaros and Z's and what else? This truck, a Civic VX, a 227 mile an hour Civic SI in 99. That car was cool. The people we'll go to for cams will be Schneider, probably down in San Diego. $4,500. Who's the piston manufacturer on that? You need to look and see. If it depends on, it's a 2618 forging. That seems a little tight. Smoke and choking, you can help, you can improve fuel mileage by heating the air. What a lot of guys do when they're the hyper mileage guys is they'll run their cold air ducting and they'll draw air down by the header behind the radiator where they're getting basically hot air, and that will improve fuel mileage. It took a long time for me to understand that. And I hate that works. I want the cold air to get better mileage, but it doesn't. Yeah, Ross, if you wanted to go up, Mr. Arizona, what's up? Let's see. Best way to EFI a 460 big block Ford with twins is also what turbos for 800 horsepower. Two of the GT45, the cheap GT45s on a 460 would work good. That would give you 800 horsepower easy and room to grow. And a 280 duration, 530 lift. So 280 is going to be 230 at 50 or so. Let me know what the 50 numbers are on the big block, but something in the 230, 236 or 236, 242, depending on how much driving. If it's a driver, go with the smaller cam, and the turbos will still do what they need to do. See if there's a single plane intake that's adapted for EFI and you can run that. If not, I don't know of any big block. Does anybody know of any big block Ford EFI intakes? Not the factory one. You don't want to use that. Yeah, the rod ratio thing, that's what I was saying. They're not running, they're not changing the rod length. They're not changing the, at least I don't think so. They're not changing the stroke length because I think that they have to run stock displacements. So if they are indeed running them at 10,500, like people are saying they are, with that stroke length, and you calculate the piston speed, it's going to be astronomical. And so the rod ratio thing is another thing for people to argue about, but I just haven't seen it make a big difference. I haven't tested any of the 2650 blowers. Jim Bell ran some on the engine or on the blower dyno, which is very cool, but I haven't ever run any on I think Mark Earhart ran one on a Coyote recently, but that's the only one I've ever seen. A 60-1 would be enough for a 4200. It's not gonna set it on kill, but it will work. The 302 truck intake lower is pretty good, but the upper is not great. If you have it on a truck, it should work okay, but otherwise there's much better choices out there. I think I'd rather have a GT40 than a truck intake. Thank you, Cyber. We're glad you're here. And I have 2 minutes. So get your questions in really fast. Time's a ticking, time's a ticking. Smoky unit hot air engine, yeah. It would be interesting to see what somebody could do if they just dedicated the internal combustion engine to fuel mileage. That would be kind of cool. Sounds like EGR. But the drawing air near the exhaust manifold, like I was talking about, doesn't get any exhaust, obviously. It just gets the heated air. I seen a guy that said a 4200 won't last over 7 pounds. We know that that's not the case. Tristan's going big. Tristan's going to the 1200 mark. James, what's up? Yeah, let me know about the TBSS. That'll be cool. And make sure everybody, before we all leave, which I have to go, press the like button. It's real simple. It's real simple. It's just like right down here somewhere. I do need to put a rotary on there, don't I? I should look into that. I have seen 0 rotaries at the wrecking yards that I've been to, but that doesn't mean we can't come up with one. I'm sure somebody out there has one. I would really like to run a 12A and a 13B with all of the stock stuff, and then do the cool stuff. Do a header and do a carb, and obviously do a turbo, because if it's a rotary, you have to do a turbo. I accidentally disliked and then I undisliked. That's good. Power gas 1.88 Ecotech, cast iron block, aluminum head. Is the head ported? Big valves, GT30, 3-bar. So the GT30 is going to dictate the power output. And so that's probably about if it's like a GT30 76, that's probably about like a 500 horsepower turbo. Evaporative carbs came out of the 70s. 300 to 400 miles per gallon with just the carburetor, because that's all that you need to make fuel mileage, is just the super magic carburetor. The L33 aluminum version of the motors that we run works very well, and you can make 1 million horsepower with those. Can you keep the EGR and work on the 4200? I don't know. I'll have to look at that and see. I need to see how it's routed. I usually get rid of it, but what numbers can we expect for an NA 4200? I don't know. We were just talking. We were thinking that it was going to be in the 340 range at the flywheel in stock trim. Mazda does crate rotaries. Do I look like I could get crate motors? Yeah, James, I think it'd probably be cheaper in the long run. Although now you can't even go get a cheap RX-7 like an early one, because people want those things now. The money's crazy for them. I wish I'd never sold. Oh, the other motor, the other car that I had was an Acura NSX, and it was a turbo one, so it was really pretty cool. What is a 305 HO? That's the L69 that they ran in the Camaro. They ran it. I think they offered it in the Monte Carlo SS. That was kind of the last hurrah of the carbureted small blocks, or at least for the 305 it was. Yes, we need bridge port and peripheral port on the rotary. Gotcha. I have a soft spot in my heart for the 12A because my good friend had an 81, I think it was an 82 or 83 RX-7 GSL, and it was a 12A, and we just had so much fun in the car that I would want to run one on the dyno. Sierra, you're new to the channel. Have you ever owned any Fox bodies? I have. I'm an original owner of a 1988 5-liter LX Notch that I bought to go showroom stock racing back in the day. So it's like the CHP cars, basically. But mine was a special order radio delete, although I didn't delete air conditioning like I should have. But I was going to drive it around, so I wanted to have it. But it was a black Notch, and I did lots and lots of things. It was in all the magazines and stuff, and it had a Vortec on it. We ran the Silver State 100 times, and Devin, I don't know. We'll have to try it. The dyno will tell us what it likes. We'll run it on 91 on pump gas when it's NA, and then we'll run on E85 under boost. No, Dusty, that should work good. They're going to be restrictive, but you'll get boost, and it will be sporty down low. Ooh, a 20B3 rotor on a Datsun 510. That's really cool for several reasons. One, that it's just a Datsun 510, which is already cool all by itself, no matter what you put in it. But then a 3 rotor in it makes it like even more awesomer. Parker, not in this motor. I'm thinking about a second build that will be more of an all-in kind of thing, and in which I would use an 05 crank in it. Because it depends on whether Tony and Lucky step their game up. If they step their game up and, come at me with some boost, then I got to have an answer for that, right? Yeah, I just saw James. I just saw Big Red on one of the Fast and the Furious movies the other night. My sons and I were watching an old one, and I said, "Gee, you guys look at that car right there." They don't pay much attention to it. I said, "But that's a really important car." Yes, Calvin's doing good stuff over there. So everybody go look at Calvin's YouTube channel, because he's and I'll be giving him shout outs all the time when we're doing this 4200 stuff, because he's had very, very, very valuable information. A 4G63 9-second sleeper truck. Very cool. Yeah, the Fast and Furious wrecked a lot of people's chances. I don't have the 4200 here, unfortunately. It's down at West Tech, so I can't get any measurements. I have an RB25 that we're going to be running, but you're already pretty cool in the 510. Yeah, and RB stuff is not cheap. Yeah, James, that's not an ordinary Camaro. It was never even, because I've known it way back before that, even when it was down at the La Carrera and stuff. And it's always been like the coolest 69 Camaro ever. Yeah, the crank is in the 05 is fully counterweighted, so it's supposed to be better. Yeah, I'm excited about it. So I have to get going, guys. Thank you for showing up. I will see you tomorrow. Might not see you tomorrow because I'm going to be rolling. I have to go down and drop some stuff off and pick some stuff up, bringing back a 462 valve modular Ford short block. And got to take a look down there some of the Buick stuff, because I talked to my buddy out at TA Performance. So we're going to try to get that going as well, and take a look and see if the bell housings are down there for the Atlas motor. Lots of stuff to check out. Thanks, Julius. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. I will see you next time.